Her name was Eleanor, and death followed her. Where it began. During show and tell in second grade, I was nervous showing off my new Power Rangers Megazord, and I clumsily dropped the saber-toothed tiger to the floor as I was showing off my transforming capabilities. I remember the uproarious laughter of the class, my face growing red and tears forming in my 8-year-old eyes. That kind of raw shame that they don't teach you to hide until you're much, much older. At that moment, she spoke up. "Hey, everyone! Check out what I brought to show and tell!" A boisterous voice called from the back, heads turning just in time to see a small girl whipping off a large beanie and exposing her bald head. "A grey alien!" These kids looked on in stunned silence before laughing again, as she ran between them making what I assumed were alien sounds, much to their delight and gratitude. That lunch I made a point to sit with her and gave her my now broken saber-toothed tiger as a thanks, her big blue eyes looking up at me in surprise, as if being thanked was already a step beyond expectations. You want me to have it?" She stared incredulously as I sat down and began eating my tater tots. You'll take good care of him, I can tell. Got a sixth sense for that sort of thing," I replied between mouthfuls of food, tapping my head and brushing my black hair aside. "It's because I'm a psychic." She carefully put the toy back in her backpack before looking at me with bemusement, folding her arms and rolling her eyes before responding. "Oh really? What am I thinking right now?" "That you want one of my tater tots. No, wait, you want two of my tater tots." I stared wide-eyed for dramatic effect and she giggled, reaching over to take them before smirking. "I told you. Mom says everyone has a superpower." "My dad says the same thing. He thinks my humor is a superpower. Says it always makes him feel better when he's having a down day at the hospital." She beamed at me, tapping her own head where the distinctive bald head sat underneath a woolly hat. Ellie had leukemia, and though I didn't know it at the time, it was terminal. It's not the sort of thing you think about as a child, especially during the late 90s. You just accepted it as an unusual thing and got on with your day. She would come to be the doppelganger I never knew I needed, the best friend who I quite literally shared the best years of my life with, and someone who made me into a better person. But there was always something lurking behind us, looming overhead as a reminder that there are limits to how far bonds can go. And it started when I shook her hand for the first time. "Well, I'm Isaac, by the way, but my friends call me Izzy." I wiped my hand on my shirt and reached out for hers. She smirked and gripped it firmly, a vibrancy like no other emanating from her as pearly whites flashed and I felt the comforts of safety. As if a moment slowed down, I looked behind her to the creature steadily rising above her, an inhuman croak rattling through the cafeteria and bouncing off the walls before smashing my ears. It gripped me with terror that to this day I can't explain, a primal fear that you know is beyond your understanding. His gnarled fingers gripped each side of her, and the nails dug into her flesh with ease, and without reaction from her. If I didn't know better, I'd say he was trying to rip out her soul, beckoning it towards the decrepit, emaciated, contorted and horrifying creature in front of me, gaunt features and hollow sockets somehow twisting bones to create expressions like a stop-motion reject. It was the first time I stared death in the face, and it was the first time I saw it grin at me. In an instant, the grip tightened, and the world continued on as if nothing had happened. My head hurt a bit, but it wasn't until later that I processed what I'd just seen. Instead, the handshake continued, with the noise and insanity of an elementary cafeteria. "Hi Melly, good to meet you, Izzy. I think we're gonna get along great. I might even show you what I've been working on in secret." Immediate intrigue pushed concern out of my child mind and I leaned closer, as if the entire school would overhear otherwise. "What is it? Are you sure you want to show me?" Her face lit up, and she whispered into her hand with all the skills of a secret agent. "Come by my house this Saturday. I'll show you how good my superpower really is." Where it grew. Mom dropped me off with a kind, sad smile on her face and gave me a hug, with a bit more strength than usual put behind it. I guess looking back, she felt thankful for what she had, a healthy son. "Be good, have fun, and stay safe, okay? I love you, honey." She brushed my hair out of my face and kissed me on the forehead. "I'll get you around 7. Let me know if you want me to give her any more of your toys." She winked and I sheepishly waved goodbye, hoping Ellie didn't see. As I walked around to the backyard, following the distant sounds of music and laughter, I was greeted with a sight that would come to define most of my life. It stood about 50 feet off the ground, nestled in the center of a beautiful oak tree with most of its leaves and branches intact on the south side. The north cleared so that the building would have a scenic view. Huge planks were sticking out of the tree, acting as stairs, but there was also a rope with a pulley system to get you up and down with greater ease. Probably for when Ellie didn't have much strength. It wasn't superbly constructed. Nails jutted out from awkward places, planks overlapped, and the wood color differed depending on availability. But it was rustic, and it felt real. If you've ever watched Codename Kids Next Door, you'll know exactly the kind of vibe it gave off. Hanging over the bay window was a sign. Professor Eleanor's Camel Lab. Keep out. Next to it were crude drawings of Ellie in a lab coat, comically sapping monsters to life, and a speech bubble declaring, "It's alive!" Very Ellie. I got closer and called out, her head popping out of the bay window and beckoning me up. I was a pretty outdoorsy kid, so I was able to climb up with relative ease. Getting to the top, she outstretched her hand and instinctively I gripped it. It was quicker, but for a few seconds, I felt the surrounding room change and blacken, the roof of her head fading away and giving birth to a clear night sky. Many arms without bodies emerging from the walls and the floors, all reaching for Ellie as the same emaciated figure looked on from the corner, bones shaking as they restructured to form a grimace. I let go, nearly stumbling back and breathing heavily, as I stared around at the densely decorated interior. No hands, no arms, no creepy figure. Instead, shelves of action figures, comics, plants, a terrarium and an ant colony resting by a crudely designed research table with a lab coat draped across and furious notes scribbled. "Izzy? You okay?" I turned to her and smiled, but I knew it wasn't convincing. I nodded and tried to make conversation about the ants, the research notes, but the more I tried, the more nervous she got, pulling at the sleeves of her sweater. I thought we trusted each other, Izzy. What's going on?" I frowned, unsure if I should even tell her. What if she thought I was crazy? But I saw my saber-toothed tiger on the shelf, placed there with such great care and attention, the leg bound together with sellotape. Every time I touch you, I see things, I said hesitantly, waiting for her to laugh or poke fun at me. But instead her eyes grew wide, and without saying another word, she reached out her hand. I took it, her fingers wrapped around mine and my eyes fixed on hers, expecting the world to freeze for her again. But she looked at me with amazement, as the wood split away above us, the stars in the sky more prominent and twinkling with such intensity that I swear they were calling out to us in Morse code. I could see pillars of stardust, and gases coalescing to form colors that to this day I don't have a name for. Galactic craters with next generation of stars waiting to illuminate impossible worlds and join their brothers and sisters in tandem with one another. We were watching the universe explode around us, all at once, and it felt overwhelming. I felt Ellie grip my hand tighter, and a single tear ran down her face. "I've seen this before, in my dreams, but I never thought I could see it again, especially not with a friend." She sniffled and smiled. I felt my stomach tie into knots. The purple glow made her cheeks look flushed, and I couldn't stop staring. "Do you think this is real? Or are we making this up in our minds?" "I don't know, but it's beautiful," I breathed, the swirling growing faster and the whooshing stronger still. As I looked at the far end of the room, a grand door began to form in the wall's outline, purple, filled with golden white flowers that grew from the top of the archway and descended to the large black handles. Once it formed, a brilliant light shone underneath the archway, and it felt like it was beckoning us. But we were already so overcome with emotion that no sooner had I seen it, we released our grip and the surroundings returned to normal. What was that?" I breathed, letting the question hang in the air for longer than I felt comfortable before turning to Ellie. She was barely conscious, laying on her back and staring wide-eyed at the ceiling, softly breathing and seemingly still able to see whatever was above the veil in the sky. I called her dad and tried to help her up. It took some time before she was lucid again, but she managed to get one sentence out before her dad carried her inside. "Don't tell anyone what we saw." I remember going home that night. When waiting for my mom to pick me up, I heard a soft, almost otherworldly weeping in the distance, pain-racked sobs of a man begging softly, barely beyond the whisper to something I couldn't see. Before I could investigate further, Mom pulled up and I got in. The first of many days spent exploring that treehouse down. From that day forth, we resolved that we'd keep this a secret from everyone, and use the time we had to explore the treehouse when we held hands, We were eventually able to recreate the same effect while holding a piece of string so long as it touched the both of us, feathering us as we explored the door itself, never venturing past it in our childhood. It would take some time before we could muster the courage to go beyond that door, and it would change everything when we did. Where we parted. Somehow, some way, on her 13th birthday, Ellie ended up in remission. She had already defied doctors' expectations to the point, and instead of growing weaker as the years went by, she grew stronger. Not long after our summer experiment with this world unseen, as we call it, started, her hair grew back at an incredible rate. She was sporting a pixie cut by the time Halloween of that year had come around, and her confidence grew with every milestone she beat. We grew, we broadened our horizons, our perspectives on life, and we did what a lot of best friends do during formative years. We grew apart and found other friends. We still spent time together, but our secret had become the norm, and with Ellie's newfound confidence came a desire to see more of the world that she wasn't able to do so before. During her teen years, she went on trips, explored the world with her family, and fell in love along the way. I spent time with local friends, played video games, and slept a lot. For 3 years, we barely spoke, save for the occasional happy birthday and Merry Christmas. No animosity or resentment, no discussion of what we'd seen all those summers in the treehouse exploring the vast beauty of the sky. Just pleasantries between best friends rapidly becoming strangers. I would soon learn, though, that fate has a way of bringing you back together, whether you like it or not. It was a few weeks before my 17th birthday, when she came knocking, eyes puffy and body shivering from the sobs. "It's come back, Izzy. Stronger than before. They don't have a way to treat it," she said between hiccups and sniffs. I felt my world tumble around me as I led her to the door. She fell into my arms sobbing. "I don't want to go, Izzy. I can't. I'm not ready." All I could do was soothe her until she was calmer. 10 years of knowing her and I still didn't have the words to say. Once she calmed down, she gripped the sides of my sleeves and she looked up at me, eyes awash with determination. "We have to go through that door." I looked to the porch, knowing full well the creature was watching. It stood there, with upper arms pinned to the corners of the walls, the cloak undulating in a sickening rhythm, its eyes slanted and the bones quivering as they curled the jaw into the devilish grin. Black bile running from every orifice on its face and joining the thick cloak of mold. It was sobbing, but it was delighted. It jerked out its tail and pointed at the bulbous end at the point of the fireplace mantle where all my pain sat. I felt the fear grip me entirely, and I was all too aware of where it was going. It knew. It wanted us to go back. Within a couple of hours, we were back outside the house and staring up at the treehouse, once formidable to stare at and filled with wonderment, joy, and discovery. It now looked decrepit, run down and on its last legs. The wood rotted through, and every soft breeze threatening to take the foundations away into the ether. The sign faded beyond legibility, and the frame of the treehouse itself was so much smaller now. "Ellie, are you sure this is what you want?" I asked, rubbing my hands nervously, knowing that this was far from a good idea. She didn't respond. She simply looked at the treehouse, its foreboding structure looming over us as that creature had done so many times before. She swallowed, looked up at the sky, and nodded affirmatively before silently climbing up into the treehouse. I looked at my phone, the background picture with my family, faded smiles, and the beautiful coastline. Had it already been 6 months since... "Izzy, come on!" Kneeling down together, Ellie held out her hand and stared at the back wall where the wood met the tree, waiting patiently for the door to appear. Ellie, I don't... I began. "I'm not letting go of this life, Izzy. Why won't you help me do this? You know what's behind the door. You know what we can do." She paused, looking back down, face hidden behind a mess of straightened black hair. "I love you, Izzy. Can't we do this together?" A pang in my chest. Those 4 small words put together to form such a big emotion. An inexorably painful moment in my life. 6 months ago. The smell of decay, ammonia and iron. It was dead too. Perched on the nightstand and looming over, never threatening or attacking, just observing. Before I could reply, she took my hand by force and refused to let go. I struggled in her hands, and her hand fell into my pockets before falling away, knocking us both back. The door formed in all its former glory, amid the dilapidation, and even when I broke away, it never faded. The warm glow from underneath, the frame expanded by the beautiful designs on the front, now brightening and darkening periodically like an otherworldly beacon. "Why are you so against this? The door is a way to start again, Izzy. No disease, no pain. Whatever allowed it to work on the outside doesn't anymore. We have to go through it. She breathed heavily as she grimaced, her body already weakening. You have to go, but not me. I can't follow, Ellie. I'm not meant for the place. Things have changed. I fumbled in my pockets to show her, but she was already holding it from the struggle. A crumpled up letter, handwritten, and with the last words. I love you, Izzy. Mom. Written on them. Her hands shook, tears threatening to stain the warm paper. When? She breathed. 6 months ago. She went peacefully, but it was there. It watched and waited as she slipped away, and I grieved. I'm still grieving, but she's gone. I don't know where, but she's gone. And I've had to come to terms with that. I knelt down beside her and took the paper, looking at her. What if you could see her again? She said, so softly and timidly that it took me a minute to register what she was implying. What if there was a way to visit her, spend time with her and never let go? A world where she's not gone, where I'm not sick. Stop it, I said, my voice shaking and tears forming in my eyes. Don't you dare. She's gone, Ellie. My mom's gone. We went through there once right before I got better. You know you'd be welcome. We just need to take the jump. Why are you so scared? She grabbed me, sobbing and full of fear, the kind a cornered animal shows before a predator pounces. Because she accepted her death with dignity, and so should you! I cried, immediately regretting words, but the sting of her using my mom was way too much to ignore. Silence fell over both of us as we absorbed each other's words. Then, out of nowhere, she looked into my eyes, and we kissed. If you've ever had a life flashes before your eyes moment, you'll know what I mean by this. But in that 5-second interval, I saw everything we were, everything we are, and everything we could be. Our childhood, our first date, buying our first apartment, graduating university, a science-themed anniversary party, our twins, growing old and dying, holding hands as we embrace the beauty of the universe above us, leaving the world together. When she pulled away, we were both crying. We'd both seen it. The potential of what could be. Ellie, I stuttered, but she got up and wiped her face, resolute as she stared at the door. You should go. You don't want to be here for this part. She smiled weakly at me, and she was right. I didn't. I climbed down the steps and made my way to the clearing, where I could see her from the bay window. One day, Izzy, you'll come through the door. But until then, look at the stars and try to find me. I'll be up there, somewhere. A few moments later, there was a flash of that brilliant purple light and darkness enveloped the yard. She was gone. Or it decayed. That night, as if on cue, I awoke to the sound of a faint croaking crawling up the bottom of my bed. I felt gnarled hands grip my shoulders and a weight so dense on my chest that it threatened to crack my ribcage. I don't know if it was angry, scared, or amused, but it took pleasure in torturing me. That smell so strong that I had to fight back vomit while laying on my back, lest I choked. It pushed down on my chest and leaned in, the sight of something moving around in its eye sockets arousing even stronger fears from me. Its face pressed up against my own, and it began to laugh. I rattled so raspy and devoid of humanity that I thought I'd never experience anything but fear again. It wanted me to know that it was coming for me next. Over the next 5 years, it followed me wherever I went. If I tried to do grocery shopping, it imprinted its face on the cashiers or rotted her flesh so much that I swear when she turned to talk to me, flecks would fly off and land in my food. If I slept anywhere that wasn't my bedroom with a piece of Ellie's clothing in it, and whisper things to me about the people I most loved, the things I feared the most, and that it would never leave me. No matter what I did, it would persist, growing bolder with each passing day. Eventually, it appeared at a red light, and I was so gripped by exhaustion, stress, and fear that I blacked out. Waking up, they told me I'd suffer a grand mal seizure, and there were complications. You're lucky you were at a red light, but the scans have revealed the cause for your seizures and, well, there's no simple way to say this. What you've got is severe, and it'll take your memory, nervous system, and unfortunately, your life. I asked them if Ellie had come around, but they just looked confused. Maybe she'd slipped in before they realized? They said I have something called SSBE, an inflammation of the brain that will steadily rob me of everything that makes me unique until I'm nothing but a husk. They've said I've had it most of my life, and it was simply dormant until I reached adulthood. Not long after the incident, my memory started failing me. I thought writing down what happened and my adventures with Ellie would be a good way to document where it began, where it went, and where it's going, before things got too much. If this feels disjointed, I apologize, but this is simply my way of making sense of it all. But we're almost caught up now. I remember how I got to this point. Where it ended. I like to use music as a beacon of lucidity amid a fog of confusion. Lots of people are like that, right? I was thinking my way here about what sort of song I wanted, and ultimately I decided on this one. I think if you hear the lyrics, you'll understand why. I've lost so much weight. 22 years old and I'm probably skinnier now than when I was 14. But at least I can eat all the burgers I want, right? That's always a plus. I'll have to go get some food after I'm done getting where I'm going. Always one extra thing to do, it seems. I put my headphones in and stared up at the night sky. It was beautiful out tonight. But in fairness, it had been for so long now. Was it last Tuesday I saw a shooting star? No, maybe that was just a satellite, but it was beautiful. I hope my ride turns up soon, but at least the music is nice. My ride pulls up. The car looks familiar and I can place where, but the driver's nice enough. I hop in, hoping I'm dressed for the occasion and keeping one ear for now. I don't want to be rude. Where to, hun? They said with a warm smile and smelling so familiar. Oh, don't worry, I'll let you know when I'm there. Just head down this road, I said, smiling back. I felt so at ease. Passing by the familiar houses filled with people I can't quite picture. Maybe Billy Madison's mom moved out of there recently? Wait, was he the one who laughed at me at prom? I hummed along with the song as we got to the street I recognized. That overgrown yard and the big oak tree in the back. Did I ever tell you it was red? I loved it. Always made me feel safe and reminded me of barbecues. Couldn't tell you why. Time to get out. I patted myself down to my wallet, phone, or my keys, and then checked again as I wasn't sure I had my wallet. Maybe my phone was at home? It was making my head hurt. I could see the fallen creature trying to hide behind the lamppost opposite to the house, shrinking his frame down as his bones crackled under the pressure. He let out a vile hiss as he peered out from the dull light. Hun, don't forget these. I looked back and Mom was in the driver's seat, holding my pills. They were the main thing between me and an absolute fog of confusion. How did they get out of my pocket? Did I even bring them with me? I took the bottle and realized it had been too long since I had any. Down them quick. Thanks, Mom. I love you, I said, turning down to smile, as a gruff taxi driver looked back at me. You're not my mom, I said, my voice trailing off, like quivering. That's right, she's not. I'm sorry, thank you. I didn't wait for a reply before walking off to the backyard, to the treehouse. I can't climb. My body is willing, but my muscles are not what they used to be. The coordination is gone. I looked and the pulley was still working, somehow. 20 years on and it could still support my weight. Some things are just wonderful in this world, don't you think? It took some effort, but I got up to the top and sat in front of that wall. I could hear the barking outside of the bay window, but I didn't dare look anymore. I knew whatever it was, that wasn't a dog. It was beckoning me to it, taunting me almost. But just because something crouches on all fours and barks doesn't make it an animal you trust. Moving over to the shelf, I found what I was looking for. 15 years on from when I gave it to her. Sabertooth, still patched up. And he looked every bit as cool as I remembered. I clutched him tight, and I felt the light from the wall grow. And just like that, there she was. Somehow older than me. I could tell that, but still so young, so happy, and most importantly, so healthy. Her vibrancy hadn't missed a step. Her hair tied back in beautiful space buns, thick circular glasses on her face, and a slew of piercings and tattoos, all draped up in the lab coat. She'd become the person she'd envisioned for so long, and I couldn't believe my eyes. In that moment, I felt clarity. Ellie, you've upgraded, I said, bewildered and happy beyond words, tears falling down my face as she smiled. the light from the door virtually blinding me. I miss you, Izzy. So many years. I don't know how long, but I never stopped thinking about this place. About you. She kneeled down and gently took the tips of my fingers. I took a rest, but I should have never pushed you before you were ready. I'm sorry for that, and for the suffering you endured. She cast her eyes to the bay window, a frame crawling around outside and howling. When you defy the natural order, you bring that thing into your home, and it does what it can to set things right. It doesn't love or hate, it just is. She pulled me to my feet, the roof no longer threatening to give me a bump on the head. As it peeled away the longer we touched, all the brilliance of the night sky laid bare before us once more. But this time, I could understand the stars as they twinkled, coded messages being sent across 1 billion miles in 1 billion years. They were okay. They were safe. They were happy. I felt peace like I hadn't experienced in years. Nothing hurt. There was no stress and no anxiety. There was just me, just Ellie, just us, in this very moment. I know you're ready, Izzy. All you need to do is take your medicine and follow me through that door. I'll be waiting for you, okay? Nothing will take us away. She kissed me on the cheek and let her hand slip away from mine, the light flashing once more before the door closed. I sank to my knees in a moment, one crippling and agonizing moment. I was left with emptiness. The hands I'd seen so many years ago reared up from every corner, aimless in their direction and shaking violently, fingers twitching and writhing as they tried desperately to find something to pull. I heard the crawling of death down below, making his way up the tree and resting somewhere above me, cackling as he mocked me. I can't stand the confusion, the fog, the pain, the inevitability of the end. I grabbed the bottle and took 2 pills. The fog started lifting, but the hands were still grabbing for anything. I took 4 more. The cackling became muffled, almost muted. The hands started sinking into the ground. He's smashing on the walls, but I can't feel or see him anymore. He's not able to hurt me now. It all fades to noise and I'm left here, clear-minded and with my phone in my hand, ready to finish the adventures of Izzy and Ellie. I'm gonna go through that door, face whatever's on the other side, and do it with Ellie by my side, the way it's supposed to be. But I will tell you this much. For anyone who's in their own fog, gripped by the looming figure of death and all its horror, for anyone who's looked to that unending, uncaring void of agony and despair, and somehow looked away and onto better things, you are the reason those stars glow in the sky. Every light is a person you love. Every twinkle is their coded message just for you. Sometimes it takes years, other times it takes decades, but it will always reach you, just like mine did. They say you can't defy the natural order, you can't cheat death, and you can't run from it forever. Well, Ellie started her defiance at a young age, and she's never stopped to look back. That was her true superpower, the ability to defy all odds. And I think it's time I joined her and did the same.